There's just so many ways to spend time with yourself, with your body, that I think are hugely beneficial in getting to truly know yourself. And when you can fully awaken to the idea of how much you love yourself and how strong your body is and everything that it's capable of and how resilient you are with this partner that you are the most intimately attached with, then taking that into your relationship.
You're listening to Get Your Marriage On, the fun and spicy podcast bringing you new tools and fresh ideas so that you can be the sexiest couple you know.
Self-acceptance and self-confidence is sexy, isn't it? I met our guest, Caley Newberry, who's a boudoir photographer in the Nashville area, by doing a Google search for Christian boudoir photographer. Anyway, we had a great time talking about her fascinating story, and I'm sure you'll love it too. I don't know why, but this episode's really special to me. I guess it's the idea of being willing to be photographed as you are, imperfections and all, says a lot about your willingness to accept and love yourself for who you are. And I admire that quality in people. I hope this episode sends a positive message to love who you are as you are so that you can love others too. So without any further ado, this is episode 39, What a Boudoir Photographer Taught Me About My Body. Caley, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and your upbringing and what got you here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee. We've been in like a little quiet neighborhood right in the middle of the city for about 10 years now. Before that, I grew up in Alabama in a very conservative church household. I was a journalism major and was a reporter for several years. And eventually at one point just really started to fall in love with photography. So I photographed weddings for about 10 years, but throughout that movement, really kind of started to fall in love with, like, my favorite part of a wedding day was watching a bride's relationship with herself on what the day where she just feels amazing and everything is being catered to her. And so in those moments where I was photographing a bride, just like in her dress, really feeling herself and seeing that confidence exude from a person, it started to really inspire me. And that, along with, I know, some other things that we'll get into, really kind of led me down the path of boudoir photography. And I've been doing this for about 6 years now.
Great. Now, you told me this story about like this awful but wonderful summer where all of these things all converged into like one big thing. Now, you weren't just any wedding photographer. You're like a darn good wedding photographer. People fly you out
I was okay
and like book you months and months in advance, right? So you weren't just some ordinary wedding photographer. Can you tell me more about that?
Okay, so like in this one year, I was kind of starting to realize that, like, as I was becoming a little bit more prominent in the wedding photography world, and as I just had more experience and all of that too, I was needing to like raise my prices, and I was booking higher end clients. And I really started to, as the things became so much more about the day, as you got into these higher budget weddings, I felt like it was less about the couple and it was more about the day. So I was kind of starting to fall out of love with that, but really had no idea what I wanted to do next. And then kind of discovered throughout this whole process that I really loved the idea of trying to like fight some of the narratives that purity culture put out there and really help women reconnect with themselves. And this one, I was kind of like really marinating on these thoughts and trying to decide like what was going to be next for me. I knew weddings weren't going to be my forever at this point. And I had this really terrible summer. So my husband works with like these really large nonprofits. He travels all over the world, or pre-COVID, he traveled all over the world. And so he was spending at the time 3 months in New York City, and which is just a really lame thing to do when you're a married person. It's like, why are we spending all this time apart? But we've been together a lot lately. But that one summer he needed to go for like 3 months for this job that he took. And during that time, my cousin, who was 40, unexpectedly passed away. And I wasn't exceptionally close to my cousin. My uncle, a few months later, also unexpectedly passed away, who I was much closer with. He was supposed to come to my house the day that he passed away. And so my family is like grieving this terrible thing, and we're all doing it together. And he passed away on a Thursday. We were going to go to a concert on that Friday. And then obviously dropped everything and I went home and spent the time with my family, but I had to come back to Nashville and shoot a wedding. And so I was supposed to have like a boudoir session on Friday, was still working. And I was able to reach out to those clients and be like, hey, this terrible thing happened. Like, I need to go be with my family. And my boudoir clients, of course, totally understood, but you can't do that with a wedding. So it was a lot. It was a lot. And it was just something that summer kind of just like broke my relationship with weddings. I had amazing clients, wonderful couples, people that I'm still close with today, but it was not what I wanted my future to be. And I really wanted to have a bigger impact than I felt like I could have with wedding photographers. So that was when I really started to figure out exactly what kind of turn I wanted my career to take, and really wanted to double down on doing boudoir work. I felt like I could have a bigger impact on women, and that it would also kind of give me, I mean, maybe it's selfish, but that it could give me the lifestyle that I wanted of being able to spend time with my family when terrible things happen, and that my life wasn't so dictated by this day that you cannot reschedule last minute. So that's kind of what started to lead me there.
So boudoir has kind of this stigma attached to it. It's kind of, I guess, what you wouldn't really consider conservative Christian upbringing, but yet you've kind of made that bridge. Can you tell me more about that? Like, what does it mean to you to be photographed? What is a boudoir photographer? What's their job?
Yeah. So when I first started doing this, again, like you said, I grew up conservative Christian culture, and we grew up in this time of purity culture and all of that, where you're just taught so strongly. And I feel like it's very much put towards men as well, or boys at that age. But I felt like girls really took a lot of the brunt of purity culture. And because it's, you have like the modesty conversation and all of that wrapped up in it, that like you are responsible to make sure that a boy doesn't lust after you. And so I feel like it really put a really terrible relationship with a lot of young women and their bodies from a really early age, that like your body is a weapon and like all of the things that your body is responsible for. So I wanted to do something about that. So I really started originally marketing this because I was not totally comfortable with what my purpose was at the time. My original push around boudoir photography was that it was a great gift for your spouse. And I thought that would be just like a good, like, yeah, do something for them. This is a fantastic gift. And it didn't take me very long to really realize that I needed to shake that message, because I realized that so many women that were coming in and doing sessions with me, like, that they were doing this, something that they were not ready for and something that they were not comfortable with necessarily, under the illusion that they were doing something for their partner, and that it was like this, I'm doing something unselfish, basically. And
Right.
That was not the message that I wanted to put out there. It's like, no, I want you to do this for you. And at the time, because I still had a lot of those like purity culture messages in my head, I didn't feel like I could say that for a long time. So I don't know, it was a really tough it was like a lot of mental gymnastics I was doing, and landed in this place that you can't give part of your body to another person fully until you know it yourself fully. And so then it was like this little baby step transition into, if you're getting married, this is a great time to just like get to know your body a little better, understand yourself a little more, and kind of figure out where your hiccups are going to be. And then over the years, I've just kind of like tiptoed more into just like, if you're doing this as a gift, fine. Like if that's what it takes, that's fine. But we're not going to approach it like this anymore. So we do a lot of homework exercises and stuff like that on like, tell me about your relationship with your body. Like, do you have any trauma that you feel like you need to work through here? Like, these are questions that I just gently come out and ask my clients to kind of help them get into this very vulnerable mindset where they realize that like, okay, if you want to share these gifts with your partner, it's totally fine. This is something you can share. I would love for you to share them. I'm happy for you to do that. But from my approach here, when you are in my studio, this is all about you. And I want this to be a gift for you to understand yourself and your body.
I love that. Tell me about your story with your relationship with your body and your very own boudoir photo shoot of your own, of yourself.
Yeah. So when it was this summer, I got married in July of 2007. And that spring, I started having some really intense health issues. So I mean, it's affecting everything. Like I could not keep food, I will say, down or in. And I just struggled with a lot of health issues around this. And so then like my husband and I had waited until we got married to have sex. And then I was so sick that I had no energy to even like give myself in this capacity, that it took so like, it's an autoimmune disease. And it took so much energy just to live day-to-day life and try to pretend like I was okay to people that I was around all the time at work and all of that, that any time that I had left over, I was too exhausted to like have any quality time with my husband. And I mean that in like both sexually speaking and just like having a good conversation over dinner. Like I didn't have it. So when I was probably like 24, my husband was gone for a little while, and I am like on about 70 milligrams of steroids a day, which is a pretty high steroid dosage. And I had like the moon face, and I had gained weight, and I was just not happy in general with my life. And so I'm like at home one night. I would say a budding photographer at the time. I was not very good at what I was doing at this point, but I just really wanted to understand myself a little bit better. And I thought one of the ways to do that would be through like just these really raw, vulnerable self-portraits. So I started taking I would say they would probably be considered boudoir, maybe like very poorly done fine art nudes kind of thing was what I was trying to do here. And I was looking through these photos, and some of them it was like, okay, well, that's a terrible photo. Taking self-portraits is hard. But other photos where I was like, they just had this very profound moment on me where it wasn't necessarily that like I looked at it and thought that I looked pretty, but there was this deeper meaning behind them where like I could tell that I was on the path to documenting a journey. And I was like, I didn't look like myself. I barely recognized myself in these photos. But I could tell in that moment that it was like, this is going to be a thing that I'm going to photograph throughout the years. And I've done that. And so in that moment, I started to develop a relationship with myself. And started to like look at this body that I appreciated that it was trying to help me out here, but we were really struggling. We weren't on good terms at the time. And then from that, I felt like I started to have this little like stir of awakening in myself of just like the importance of developing a personal relationship with my body. And I felt like my relationship in my marriage grew from there too, but it had to start with me understanding myself a little bit better and taking that moment to just appreciate where I was in life. And the fact that I was surviving somehow throughout how sick I was in that moment was just a really beautiful process for me. And just like I would say the beginning of all of this.
So this is like your journalism self coming out, right? I'm going to
Maybe so. Yeah.
I'm going to get better at that. So in a way, this boudoir photography is kind of like a form of therapy for yourself. It's like really seeing that. And how does that translate to work with your clients? Any like stories you can tell of like some of your clients and how this process has really kind of turned a corner for them?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier on that early on I had done these as like wanting them to be a gift. And I feel like it was really my clients that helped me see how much deeper this could go. So I have clients that have come in that have been struggling with infertility or that have had multiple miscarriages and need to see that like their body is not their enemy, that there's this thing, that there's like this sexual relationship that they have with their partners, and they're trying to create a child, but then this same body that's trying to create a child and having this beautiful relationship with their partners is also not carrying this child to term and causing all of this grief. And so it's been a really confusing process for a lot of women. And I think that has been part of a lot of their journey to, I'm not going to say that it like, of course, like helps with their fertility or anything like that, but their mindset around it of just like realizing that their body is not their enemy. There's been several people like me who have had a lot of autoimmune issues or health issues, cancer survivors, all of that, that have something to celebrate, that maybe it's their health. I've had people that have come in after they have lost a spouse, and they're doing sessions to like help them grieve and understand themselves in this time and document that grief. And so, we do a lot of like laughing and smiling photos and things like that. But also we just like take advantage of that. And I wish I have a session that I did not get a model release for, and it's totally fine. But you just start talking to a client, and as they start to like tear up when you're having this conversation, I photograph that moment. And there's really beautiful raw images in this too. And so we try to, of course, get the photos where you're just like beautiful and glamorous and all of that. But I also want to document the process of like just these raw, vulnerable feelings. And then a couple of years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago now, I had like a 2-month span where the majority of my clients were women that were in their 50s, and they had been in either verbally or emotionally, and on a couple of occasions, physically abusive relationships, marriages for 25 years. You know, they have grown children, and they finally got the courage to walk away from those abusive relationships and have no idea what a healthy sexuality looks like, because it's always been in the concept of this abusive person. And so there's a lot of trauma associated with that. I very firmly believe that our bodies carry our traumas with us. I also ask them at the beginning of every session, how do you want to feel when you see these photos? And I had a girl last week who said that she wanted to feel beautiful for the first time. And to me, that's the baseline. Like, of course, I want you to feel beautiful, but I want to take it deeper than that. But when you have the baseline of a client who has never felt beautiful before, then it's like, okay, well, we're going to start here. Like, we're just going to get beautiful photos. And as the session went on, I felt like I could get some deeper things from her. But the thing that she needed in that moment was to feel beautiful. And, you know, you get other clients. I've had some that say, like, I just want to experience joy and I want that to be captured. And the things that people tell me that they want to feel throughout these sessions is just such a beautiful insight. And that I mean, I can't even state how much I appreciate that they let me in on this, but it's something that we take through their entire session for the day. And the photos that I show them in their slideshow and all of that is all hinged on how you want to feel when you see these photos. And it very rarely involves another person. It's so often just like their inner, you know, the things that are swimming through their heads all day, every day, the things that they need to feel. It's never something that involves another person. It's always about what's going on in their heads and things that I don't feel like they often share with other people. So often our sessions start off with like tears in people's eyes, because the very first question when they actually like put their first outfit on and have their hair and makeup done is, what do you want to feel when you see these photos? And that's automatically like a very vulnerable and emotional question.
That's great. So this is inspiring. This isn't about being, I don't know of a good word to describe it. This isn't about like being X-rated. This is about inspiring. This is kind of like akin to Renaissance art, right? It's there to inspire. It's about the beauty of the form and the person and what you're trying to convey through that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I told you when we talked previously that like going to the Vatican for the first time and seeing all of this like Roman art was just like, oh, this is exactly what I want to capture. Like, I want this timeless beauty photographed. And so that's where I get a ton of my inspiration from on how I want to do this. And there are photographers and there's one in my town that is far more, I would say, sexual than I am in her photos. And if that's what somebody needs, then by all means, go for it. That's fine. But that's not exactly what my process is here. We definitely kind of take the emotion into it and really try to capture someone exactly where they are and meet them in that place. Like I was telling you, like the client that just said she wanted to feel beautiful. It's like, okay, if I hadn't known from that question that you've never really felt beautiful before, and she is a stunning human being. So it was shocking to me that was her answer. And so the fact that she had never felt it, it's like, okay, I need to meet you there. And if I just kind of came in and photographed everyone in this very like borderline erotic type of work, then I would not have met her where she needed to be. So I think everybody has their own story of their relationship with their bodies, and some people develop it at a very early age and get a healthy relationship, and that's fantastic. And then some people are in their 50s and 60s and have never reached that point before.
Great. So from your very first session with yourself, with putting your camera on the timer and like doing your own, like documenting your own journey, have you taken done your own photo shoots several times since then and cataloging your change with yourself over that time?
Yes, I have. So in that first session that I did, I mentioned I was like, I had all the steroid weight, the moon face, all of that. And I didn't do another session. It was probably a few years later. I know we weren't living in the small town we were in anymore. And so it was definitely a few years from when we moved. And the next session was when I was no longer on steroids. I had reached the point in my health that my doctor had said, like, your bones are going to start deteriorating if you stay on steroids. So I had to come off of them. And so coming down from a year and a half of being on these, you take the autoimmune disease, first of all, and then just like the fight of trying to like stay awake all the time when your body is so used to having this hit every day, was tough. And so I also started to I was always tired even more than I already was. And I was dropping all of this weight. So the weight that the steroids had helped me retain over the years, was all falling off. And I got down to about 85 pounds at my sickest. And I still didn't realize how skinny I was. I think I still had like a lot of my personal body insecurities. Those things did not go away completely because, I don't know many women that don't have like some insecurity they're fighting at some point. And I still had a lot of those insecurities on my body that my brain just was not comprehending where I was in that moment. And so I had people tell me that like I was withering away. And even though I was wearing a size 10 in kids jeans, I had no idea how sick and tiny I was. And so I did another photo shoot. And in that moment, realized, first of all, that there's like some body dysmorphia going on in my brain, because I can see how like withering away I am. But my brain also immediately went to like a little tummy pooch that I was very insecure about. And that was the first thing that my brain saw, instead of that, like my arms were like, this big around, and that, everything else was like the way that my shoulder blades stuck out and all of that. I didn't see how dangerously thin I was. And so that was a little bit of an awakening for me in realizing that I am not perceiving my body as it actually is. And that I had work to do, that I had to actually work a little harder to fight the insecurities, and know that none of that defines who I am or anything like that. When I was able to get past the insecurities and seeing how thin I was a motivation to like, okay, you've got to figure out what's going on here. And then I did another shoot several years later. I gained 15 pounds and was like back to like a decently healthy weight, and have continued to gain since then. And then I also realized like along this journey too, that as I'm gaining weight, I'm shaming myself for it. And I was trying to fight this in my own head. And so then ended up doing another set of self-portraits and realizing that like, oh, my favorite self-portraits are when I'm feeling my healthiest, and that I am at a heavier weight, and that I feel the most energetic, right? It was the first time I had energy in years, like 10 years, probably the first time I had energy. And so photographing those, now I will also say my skills got a lot better by this point too, but that was my favorite set of photos that I had done, because it felt like the real me, and I could actually document happiness and health instead of sickness and wasting away.
That's so beautiful. Part of your
fun
process is you take the photos, and then a few weeks later, your client comes back for a reveal of the photos. Mm-hmm. And that's a very, very touching, very emotional moment, and very telling. Can you talk about that?
It's probably selfish of me that I make them come back. Like I could just send them an online gallery, but I really want to watch their reactions. So I have them come back, and we make an event out of it. And I do specialize in print products, so being in person is a lot easier to help them pick out their printed products and stuff like that. So there is purpose behind it. And I start off with like a slideshow. And I feel like there's, over the years, I used to do like these very like romantic songs and stuff like that. And now I play This Girl Is on Fire. So just like fit with the message that we're trying to put out there. We have a little like box of tissues out here too, in case we need it. And I would say like 1 in every 5 people cries. And maybe it's like 1 in every 10 like starts like standing up and cheering for herself. So it's really fun to watch these women just like have no idea how beautiful they really are. Like even doing like family portraits and stuff like that over the years, even when I did weddings and engagements and all of that, you're trying to catch a moment in a relationship. And so the moment is more important than the pose. And that's different here. Here it's the posing and the intention, and we go kind of slow and we have fun in the shoots, but it's a very long, intentional, like my clients are sore the next day from posing kind of process. And so they have no idea that they can actually look like this because nobody poses themselves like this in real life. And so watching those feelings come out in their photos and how they react to them. It's probably my favorite part of my job, just like sitting there watching them have either it's usually joy. That's kind of what I'm going for, but sometimes it is highly emotional for women that have never seen themselves as beautiful. And then they're able to find, 40, 50, 60, just absolutely stunning photos of themselves that they can't let go of. And so they put them all in their album because they've never had that many photos of themselves in their lives over the years that they've loved. And to have them all in one moment is just a really powerful thing to watch.
Can you share maybe one or two of your most memorable photo reveal sessions you've had with a client?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I had my first client that she had been married for 25 years to an emotionally abusive person and verbally abusive person. And she said in those 25 years, he had never told her that she was beautiful. She was very thin. And she said that he used to come up and like pinch her love handles and tell her that she was chubby and all of this stuff. And she internalized those messages over the years. And so she was sitting on our couch and we start playing these, and she's very nervous throughout our whole session. Like the first several poses, she was like noticeably shaking because she was so anxious.
Intense, probably.
Yes. And I set up those where like the first few photos I know are going to be throwaway photos. They're just to get you comfortable. Every now and then somebody nails them, but for the most part, those first few photos I know are going to be toss away photos while we're just getting to know each other. And I'm watching like which side of your face is your good side and all of those things. Your air quotes again, good side, the side that they would prefer to see. So I know that these are going to be throwaway photos for the most part, and that's what hers were because she was so nervous and you could see it in her expression. And I had to show her that she could trust me and she had to get comfortable with me, and that's all part of the process. But she's the reason that I keep Kleenex in my studio now, because she's watching these photos. At the time I just had toilet paper that I went and handed her, but she's just staring at these photos. And I would pull, we go through one by one and we rate each photo for which one that they like the best and think that they want to keep. And it would take her 20, 30 seconds to answer for each photo because she was just staring at them. And I just didn't talk. I just didn't want to break that moment where she's processing how she actually looks. Like, this is not, I didn't Photoshop her. This is just what she looks like when she's posed well and lit well and all of that. And she had no idea that she could look that way. And so every photo, she would just sit there and take it in. And of course, at first I'm thinking, does she hate them all? But then she would talk and she would just be like, that's beautiful. And but it would take her 10 or 20 seconds to say that every single time. And watching her confidence as we kept going through all of them, as she saw each photo, she just got so excited. And so it started off in these tears, and then every now and then a photo would come up that would make her cry again. But she just it went from I would say started off kind of grieving a little bit that she had never seen this in herself before. And by the end of it, she's just crying happy tears. And it was one of the most powerful experiences that I've had when watching a woman see those photos for the first time.
I love it. Is there another memorable one?
My other favorite is the other extreme. She was a young woman she's getting married, and I don't do a lot of brides. I mean, I'm always happy to, but I just don't end up getting a lot of brides. I don't think that that's the message I've put out there. But she was getting married, and I think knew that she was a cute girl, right? Cute woman. But when we started playing her slideshow, she actually got up and started cheering at herself and was just whooping around the studio. Whenever a photo came up, she would just be like, oh my gosh, and put her hands on her face and was freaking out. So there's both you get both ends of the spectrum. Those are probably my two biggest extremes. But watching her, I just laughed the whole time watching her just rejoice in what she saw in herself.
What's your advice for anyone listening to this that feels like they can improve their relationship with their body, which is probably everyone out there.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, I don't think you ever arrive at a moment like that, right? It's like you get wiser with age, but you never arrive at ultimate wisdom. I feel like this is all part of that too, because our bodies are also constantly changing. And so, you may be happy with yourself at 28 and you've like done some work to stay there. And then by 45, you don't have the same body anymore. So I would think my advice to people is that it takes a lot of mental work. It's always a process. It's not something you arrive at. The ability to look at a photo and appreciate the things that you may not love about yourself, but like take it in, do the mental exercise of thanking your body for all of the things that it has. I tell a lot of people, it's part of my like overall messaging. I talk to my Instagram stories a good bit, and this is one of the things that I felt like resonated with a lot of people. When I was as sick as I was, I had this big struggle with that. Like I wanted to say, I am not my body. And so that allowed me to separate from my body in a way that I would say was unhealthy, that I stopped caring about my body because it was like, I am not my body. This doesn't matter. And then it became, no, like I am my body. My body is this thing that does all of this work for me. And my body tried so hard to save me over all of these years when I was so sick. And so I've kind of arrived at this place that I think I'm actually happy with what this message says, is that we're in partnership with our bodies, that your body does not define you, but you're not separate from it either. Like it is your container for how you live this life. And you're doing this together. So I feel like it's a lot like a marriage, right? Like you are your own person, but you're also in a partnership. And I feel like your own relationship with your body is that way too. Like you have something bigger than your body inside you, but you're still in this relationship with it. So how do you nurture it? How do you take care of it? Like you wouldn't talk to your partner with the kind of self-loathing that you talk to or I hope you wouldn't at least talk to your partner with the kind of self-loathing that I feel like women especially, but probably men too, can talk to their bodies about. So why would you treat something that you live your life with that way? Like I'm nicer to anybody and everybody that I can be to my own self. And it takes a lot of mental work to get to that place. So that's the first thing I would say. And I feel like until you reach that point, you're never going to be able to fully embrace yourself or your relationships or anything until you confidently know who you are and how to take care of your own body.
When you can like yourself and your embodied self, what does that do for individuals? Like, what do their relationships look like? How do they interact?
I think it changes everything. Like going into life, waking up every morning, putting on clothes that you don't feel like you look good in. And I had this conversation with a person not that long ago that would say that she noticed every time she looked in the mirror, she would pinch her love handles. And she's like, it became a compulsion. Like I couldn't stop myself from doing it. That every time I looked at myself, that was where my eye went, and I would pinch my love handles. And so I stopped her and I was like, what was the thought that went through your head when you did that? And she was like, sometimes there wasn't even a thought, but when there was one, it was self-loathing. She's like, otherwise it became a compulsion. I was like, do you think it's possible that even when you weren't having those active thoughts, those like love handle pinches were still sending that subliminal physical message of self-loathing? And she was like, oh, absolutely. I never felt better about myself when I did it. And I think that that's the kind of the extreme example a little bit, right? Of all of the ways that the things that we say and do to our bodies affect our lives. So getting into that place of appreciating yourself helps you wake up. I mean, how powerful is it when you wake up and you're just like, I really like myself today. And it feels like you can do anything. And it's not all about what you do, but you're more available to others as well when you're not wasting energy hating on yourself. Does that make sense?
I love it. Yes.
Answer that question.
Absolutely. Caley, is there anything else you want to share?
I don't know. I feel like there's still like a lot of messages around women and their own sexuality that I've always struggled with this messaging of like not being able to really put it in words, because I don't want to tell like, I'm very much in the fight against purity culture. I was harmed by it. I know a lot of people that were harmed by it. And not even like my parents were not overly, my parents didn't really even talk about sex to me very much at all, ever. And I was not at a young age as like sexually interested person as a teenager or anything like that. And so I feel like a person that escaped pretty undamaged by purity culture in my childhood. But I carried so many messages of that when you're messaging throughout high school and college and young adulthood is sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, don't have sex, then all of a sudden you're supposed to put on a white dress or a suit or whatever, and then all of a sudden anything is in bounds. And that's the message that I'm trying to like fight a little bit. And so I also don't want to like throw out that like, go like be sexually active, explore, have fun, if that's not the thing that like your morals align with. But I think that there is a balance that people have missed all along the way. And until you're able to take those baby steps, it doesn't mean you need to go do a boudoir session. Like there are plenty of people that I would say that, no, boudoir session may not be for you. And that's fine. Like I'm here if it's something that feels helpful to your like road to recovery and embracing yourself and loving yourself fully. But that's not everybody's way of doing this. But I think the ability to just even like, put lotion on your skin and like rubbing over like the jiggly bits and all of that to moisturize your skin and not hate yourself while you do it. There's just so many ways to spend time with yourself, with your body, that I think are hugely beneficial in getting to truly know yourself. And when you can fully awaken to the idea of how much you love yourself and how strong your body is and everything that it's capable of and how resilient you are with this partner that you are the most intimately attached with, then taking that into your relationships, and you do it, if you can do it in that order, I think that is ideal. But even in my life over the past several years, I have made room specifically to have a relationship with myself before I'm able to share things with my partner. And I mean, we've been married for almost 14 years, and he is like the other half of my brain. I feel like sometimes we are the same person, and I want to share everything with him, but there is still like this precious gift of being able to spend time by yourself that I think we miss out on a lot.
That's beautiful. That's great. If people want to find more about you, reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I would say I'm the most active on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Caley Newberry Studios. Caley is Caley. And that's where I talk the most to people and try to put the most positive messages out there. And then from there, you can also like find my website and stuff like that. But Instagram is definitely my go-to place.
Sounds good. Well, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate it.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Get Your Marriage On. And if you did, we would love it if you would take a few seconds to give us a rating on iTunes and to share the show with your friends. They'll thank you for life. Once you've done that, you can head over to getyourmarriageon.com for more resources about today's topic and to download our amazing marriage apps. Now go get your marriage on.